Hello everybody. It's great to be on this channel once more, doing another video. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who's subscribed to my channel. I'm so grateful that I have all these new subscribers that I'm just blown away by it. I just cannot believe that I have, I think, over 500 subscribers. That is so, you know, because my channel is very small, and it's a niche channel. I do sort of weave in and out into other topics that might not be directly Berlin related, and I'm actually thinking about setting up another channel to review some of my other books that I have in my library, because they might not fit directly with this particular channel as it relates to Berlin. This segment that I'm going to do, it won't be as long as my other ones, because I've done a couple of hour videos or 40-minute videos, but this one will be a lot shorter, and it's to do with two topics. One is Carlos the Jackal, and the other one is the Baader Meinhof gang. Now, these were two notorious gangs of the 70s, and this is an album by a band called Moby Grape. It's titled "It's Great to Be Straight, Yeah." And I remember when they were promoting this on Jules Holland, and they were talking about the cover and about Carlos the Jackal. Now, I knew who he was because of an event when he was in Austria, and he kidnapped some. He went in and he did an operation against OPEC in Vienna, and it was his biggest operation and most successful operation, and he was able to leave the country, and the Prime Minister or the President at the time was heavily criticised for letting him go at a time when really he could have sent, you know, like special forces to try and force him out, like the siege of the SAS did in the Iranian embassy in 1980. But he didn't want to risk any deaths, because at that time there were two deaths tragically in that particular operation. So he thought it better that they give him a plane and he was able to fly out of Vienna. So he was a bit had sort of these narcissistic tendencies. You know, he wanted everybody to know who he was, and so on and so forth. But he was, I think, notorious in the sense that he wanted to be able to appear in newspapers and have people talk about him, and you know, it's really clearly had a high opinion of himself. But anyway, when I saw this this band, because they used to be the Happy Mondays with Sean Ryder and his mate, you know, played the maracas. Now I don't know his name off the top of my head, but he's just like one of these guys who's like a friend of the band, and they ask him to join in, you know. And he said, "Oh, what do you play? Do you play guitar? Do you play the drums? Do you play bass?" And he couldn't play any of those things. All he could do was play the maracas and dance that funny dance that he does. So anyway, when they formed Moby Grape, he was part of the band. He was in the band, you know, and he played like percussion, but it was all like at a time. It was quite funny. But they were promoting this album, and I got to see the cover, and they said, "This is Carlos the Jackal." So I thought, wow, Carlos the Jackal. And you've got this kind of Andy Warhol type art design, you know, with Carlos the Jackal's face. Now, he had a big round face, and one of the things was he liked his food, and he would just overeat, or eat too much. And when he had that OPEC operation in Vienna, he was out of shape, so they had to get his weight down before he could take on this massive undertaking in Vienna. But that's not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about how it was captured. He was in Sudan, and I think he was at a market, and he was spotted by one of the CIA operatives that were out there, but they weren't sure if that was really him. So they took a photo of him and they sent it back to Langley. Now Langley's in Virginia, in the United States, and it's where the headquarters is of the CIA. And this isn't, you know, it's not like you could take your mobile phone and take a photo. Everything had to be done, you know, like you had to send it, physically send it. You couldn't do it digitally, you know, like over the internet. So anyway, and they said, yeah, that was him. And they said, well, how are we going to get him? So they would observe his routine, you know, when he would go to the market, when he would go shopping, who were the visitors that would come and visit him, and things like that. And I'm sure that they had help over from the Sudanese government and their police force, because you and the other thing you need to have a lot of money, so you have to bribe people in high places, or the people that can make, you know, decisions, or they would you know, they would close their eyes for, you know, half a minute or a minute or you know, half an hour or whatever it is, you know, because they're getting paid for it. And of course, clearly, the Sudanese, whoever these people were, that they needed, that had to partake in this operation of capturing Carlos, they clearly succeeded. And one of the observations that they made was that he had to go to the dentist. So, and they had this plan. So when he went to the dentist, they gave him an injection, and when Carlos woke up, he woke up in a plane. He was shackled in the plane and handcuffed, going to Paris, because there were some operations that he did in Paris where there were French people that he actually killed, and that's how they captured him. And it wasn't long ago actually that he passed away in prison. And you know, I mean, to be on the run is one thing, but you'd always have to be looking over your shoulder constantly, because you'd be wondering to yourself, well, you know, am I going to be found out? Is people going to find me out? It's like there was, I think Milosevic was another person that was captured, because he was on the run for quite some time. This was in the Yugoslav war of the 90s, and eventually he was captured. And then there was another person, which I won't talk about right now, but that was also recently captured, who was also in a terrorist organisation. But anyway, so you don't know who would actually turn on you, and if money's being offered, and a lot of money's being offered, you know, that could be your pension plan, that could be your retirement, or you could get an early retirement as a result of the money being offered if you were to turn somebody in. So, but I mean, you know, that your conscience would play havoc on you. You know, I mean, I'm sure there were people that said, no, I can't do it. You know, it's just I just couldn't do it. You know, because it's kind of accepting dirty money. But anyway, so anyway, that's Carlos the Jackal. With this album, I haven't actually heard this. This is still sealed, but this is just the cover of Carlos, and the music is just the music from the band of the songs that they wrote and they performed. However, this album is of the Baader Meinhof gang. Now, these are all those that were part of the gang of the Baader Meinhof. They called themselves the Red Army Faction, or the Roten Armee Fraktion. But it was the press that called them the Baader Meinhof gang, which really should have been Baader Enslin gang, but perhaps it doesn't quite have the ring like Baader Meinhof. Now, there was a band called the Auteurs, and Luke Haynes was the lead singer and the lyricist to that band, but he wanted to do a solo project, and this was the solo project that he chose to do, and he dedicated the whole album. It was a concept album of writing about the Baader Meinhof gang. And it's all over YouTube. So you type in Luke Haines Baader Meinhof, for example, or Mogadishu, but you will be able to hear the music that he wrote. Now, when I first heard Baader Meinhof, the song Baader Meinhof, I thought it was some like German krautrock band, but it wasn't. It was Luke Haines from the Auteurs. Now, apparently, he helped create, or he helped start Britpop, and he's done some interviews on this. There is a podcast that I have heard from Luke Haines where he talks about this album and what he went through, and he said in the 90s there isn't that information that you can get from your mobile phone. There wasn't no internet, or the internet was in the infancy. So go to Foyles. Now Foyles in London was this big bookshop. It's on several stories. You know, it's still going on now. Still, you could go to Foyles now and, you know, do your shopping, book shopping there. And he said he had to find out about Baader Meinhof. And there's a book by I think Stefan Aust, who knew the Baader Meinhof gang. He knew Meinhof, Ulrike Meinhof. He knew her, and he wrote this old book, which in one of my previous videos I was able to discuss or review the book. And so he was very close to them, but Luke Haines said there wasn't really that much information other than from that book, and that's the book that he took inspiration from. Now this album is all sort of stripped down. It's kind of acoustic. It's got that acoustic feel on it, and it's very good. There is one track on here called GSG 29, but really it should be GS9, not GSG 29. I mean, that was a small point to bring out, but it really is. It should be SG9 was GS9. But he has to get. He has to be able to write. You know, to be able to write the lyrics in such a way that will fit a melody. So you have to do some sort of tweaking and a bit of creative license in order for you to make the music fit together. But yeah, that was something that was brought to his attention, and of course he smiled sly. He had a sly smile because he realised what he had to do in order for him to be able to write that song. But anyway, this in and of itself is about the Baader Meinhof gang, as opposed to Carlos the Jackal, which is just the cover. Now, in my other videos, I have talked a little bit more about the Baader Meinhof gang. There is a lot more to the story. Clearly, it's something that is still, in some ways, it's part of German and Berlin history. One of the things that I'm starting to find out now is that how the Stasi actually helped the Baader Meinhof gang. Because I believe if they didn't have the Stasi, and if they didn't have East Berlin as it was at the time, before the fall of the wall, they would have had great difficulties in order for them to be in operation. Because one, you need money, because if you're on the underground, if you're on the run, without any money there isn't really much that you can do. Second, you need support. You know, you need to get weapons, you need to get false documents and passports and all that kind of thing. And I know that the Stasi did help the Baader Meinhof gang, especially when they had to fly out of Berlin. They would go into East Berlin, and then from East Berlin they were able to fly out from Schönefeld Airport, anywhere in the world where they needed to. So they got a lot of help from the Stasi. Now that connection between the Stasi and the Baader Meinhof gang is something that I need to look more deeply into, to find out as much as I can in that relationship. But it could also mean that some of that information will be forever hidden from public gaze, because it's too sensitive to actually allow that information for the public to have access to it. But anyway, so the other thing that was also comes to mind is that when they wanted to free Baader, Andreas Baader, because he was in police custody, but he went to, I think, a library or something like that, and so they didn't at that time they didn't have police supervision, or he didn't have police supervision, and it was at that point that they sprung into operation to try and free him, and this was Ulrike Meinhof. Ulrike Meinhof was there at the time. Now, for some of you viewers, you might know a lady called Janet Street Porter. Janet Street Porter was like a sort of a kind of journalist, celebrity type. You know, she would appear on television, she'd give interviews and that. Now imagine that being Ulrike Meinhof. She was that kind of person, you know. She'd appeared on television, she was this great journalist, she had a reputation of being an intellect, and if they wanted to have somebody with an opposing view, they would offer to have her on these talk shows. Now, at the time of Andreas Baader, of freeing him and getting him on the run, she was part of that operation. She was the one that actually, because they had to jump through a window. It's really quite bizarre, really, the whole thing that actually happened at that time. But the story goes, or the myth goes, that she was like in a situation where it was like 50-50. Like on the one hand, she would go into the underground with the rest of with Gudrun Ensslin and Baader Meinhof, but on the other hand, she would sort of stay and say, no, this is too much for me, I won't do it. But what gives her away is her handbag. Her handbag gave her away. Why? Because there was a gun in it, and she left that handbag behind. She didn't take the handbag with her. So the intent was to do what she did. She wasn't there, you know, where the myth says, oh, she was sort of pulled into it. She wasn't sure whether she should go through with it. She wasn't sure whether she would go start robbing banks and planting bombs at army air bases. She decided beforehand that is exactly what she was doing. Why? Because of that handbag and the fact that she had a handgun in that handbag. That gives her away. The other thing that isn't quite clear about the Baader Meinhof gang, and it sort of it seems to be murky, was their philosophy. What was it about the Baader Meinhof gang that was so, why they did what they did, basically? What was their motive? And I would say this: they were clear about their motive. They were against the government, they were against the Vietnam War, they were against the capitalism, because they believed in Marxism and Maoism. And one of the clues about the Vietnam War is quite clear. It's the German government were helping the Americans with the Vietnam War. So they were secretly supplying the Americans in order for the Americans themselves to be able to fight the Vietnamese in Vietnam. That was something that I didn't know. I only just sort of found that out recently. So there were ships that were moving from German ports, and they were sailing all the way down to Vietnam to supply the Americans. Now the British were actually supplying and supporting behind the scenes the Americans during the Vietnam War. The only thing that they wouldn't do was to send troops. This is one of the reasons why the Baader Meinhof gang did what they did. They did not believe in the Vietnam War. They were supporting the communists, or the Viet Cong, which was in North Vietnam against the South Vietnamese. And the United States is an empire. It's imperialistic in all that it does. So they do not like sovereignty. So there are sovereign countries around the world who, in one way or another, they choose to meddle in their government, in their economy, in their banking, and in any other way, and wanted to get access to their natural resources. This is a theme that comes up quite a lot. So I believe the Baader Meinhof gang knew what their philosophy was, knew why they were doing what they did, and the clues are there if you're prepared to look into it. So anyway, it's Luke Haynes, Baader Meinhof. I do recommend this album because it is all about the Baader Meinhof gang, as opposed to this one, which is Black Grape singing their songs, but it has nothing to do with Carlos the Jackal. So once again, I'd like to thank all my viewers, subscribers, for subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate that, and I hope to do some more regular videos sometime in the future. I've got a few that's coming up. You know, Karl Marx is one I really like to do, Karl Marx. And like I said, that I'm thinking of actually opening up a new channel. So auf Wiedersehen, alles Gute und fall nicht nieder.